Welcome back to another episode of Fitness and Finance podcast with my host, Jennifer Scherer, my beautiful Jennifer, and our co-host, Tony Shore. Tony, how are you?
Oh, I am doing great. I've had a great week, actually. I got a lot accomplished. I feel good when I get a lot done during the week. Sometimes we complain at the end of the week, oh, it's been a long week, had so much to do. But I think we need to flip that. It's like, man, after a long week, I feel good. I got a lot done. I guess there's a difference. It's worse though if you feel like you've had a long week and you didn't accomplish much, right?
Yeah, that's the worst.
That is the worst. Yeah. But this week I had a long week, but I feel like I actually accomplished something.
Awesome.
And I'm gearing up for tomorrow, the big day. My daughter, Allison, graduates from college with honors.
Yay.
With honors.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So where is Allison in the line of children?
Middle child. I have three, and Adam is the oldest. He's married and already on his career. Allison graduates tomorrow from college, and she already has a full-time job offer. She's going to start in September for CLA, a big accounting firm, and she'll be auditing nonprofits for them. And that's what she interned last summer. She'd interned, and they offered her a contract. They said, come work for us.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So she's super smart. We have no idea how that happened. And then our youngest, Anna.
Blueberries.
What?
It's blueberries.
Blueberries.
That's the answer.
No, that was Adam.
That was Adam. Blueberries was the answer for Adam.
We're all in for blueberries. That's why. Antioxidants. That's why.
Yeah. Blueberries are good for you. You just can't sit and eat an entire container in one sitting. You'll have tummy troubles. I guess that's what we didn't know that. The doctors told us. Yeah. And he was a little upset we didn't know that. But
Love it.
His facial expression said, "You guys are idiots." I always love that when a professional like a doctor looks at you like, "Wow, You'd think he's seen it all. Nothing's going to surprise him, and then you get the look.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm excited. How about you guys, Jennifer? What have you been up to? I mean, we know that you've been dealing with Jeff, putting up with him. That's I'm going to guess that's 60% of your time. What do you do with the other 40?
Well, I have to say my week was very busy. We had one of our full-time trainers out on vacation this week.
Oh,
so I had some 12-hour days that were long. And
wow, I bet.
Yeah. So it's nice. We're getting ready to leave actually today to go to Nelly's Ford, Virginia, to stay in a tiny house for the first time.
You're going to stay in one of those tiny homes.
Yeah.
Those look so cool. I've always wanted to do that.
Yeah, we have too. And so we'll let you know how it goes.
We're going to go hiking for the weekend.
Yeah.
And then bunk in a tiny home.
Yeah.
Is that a nice area? I'm not familiar with that area of Virginia.
Yeah, it's near Wintergreen. And we actually have never actually stayed there. So we're going to check out some of the local hiking trails. And, it's got like a little miniature gas cooking, cooktop there in the tiny house. So we're going to see about making a meal without, running into each other, running each other over.
It's pretty interesting. Well, we enjoy hiking quite a bit. That's one of our favorite pastimes. So we like to go wherever there's a good mountain. We went to Mount Rogers, which is the tallest mountain in Virginia. A few months ago, and it was a great time. And
you go hiking up there?
Yeah, we go hiking everywhere we can, for sure.
Yeah, that's good. But high up, were you pretty high up hiking?
Yeah, that was 5,700 feet. But we went to Pikes Peak. Well, you were there, Tony. I think you were at Colorado when we were there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we did Pikes Peak last summer.
Yep.
We did it in 5 hours and change. 5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
13 and a half miles.
I told Jeff that was harder for me than when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. No joke.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've heard.
I could barely keep up with him.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We did really well, but we, at 11,000 feet, you start to get some oxygen issues, where you have to really.
Yeah. Did you get loopy?
We got a little loopy. Yeah.
I got a little nauseous.
Yeah, she did.
But Jeff, lack of oxygen to the brain. Could you really tell with Jeff? Could you tell any difference? Did it make any?
I was a hockey player. So.
Did it make any difference?
Did get lost in a boulder field.
We did. It was a blank stare.
Where are we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's dangerous.
I had this normal stare.
Stay safe, you guys. That's the thing about hiking. You gotta take the precautions. You don't want to overdo it.
I don't know if you know this, but we're also, legendary kickboxers, so we know Muay Thai. So if any bears come out.
Okay. I don't think that kickboxing is going to work with a bear. I don't think that's going to help you at all.
Well, I saw that one video, the video of the golden bear that fights with the other guy. Seen that one? No.
Yeah, there's reality and then there's the internet, Jeff.
Yeah,
I need to talk to you about separating those two.
Come on.
I think you need to learn more about bears before you.
Well, I have an interesting story about a bear. When I was a kid, that was quite a story. We were camping, my brother and one of our friends. We were camping on a lake, and pretty close to my house. My parents had a house on Main Street, but across Main Street there was a property onto the lake, and so we were staying there one night, and we thought my dad was just messing with us because we heard a bunch of rustling outside and some cans kicking. We were just like, "Dad, knock it off," and then we could see this, so we could hear the bear breathing, but he also kind of stood up, and we saw it through the light in the tent. And of course, when you're a kid and light makes everything bigger, so I don't know how big he was, but he was there, and he kind of rolled onto our tent. So my brother and Brandon Gallagher and I, we're huddled in the middle, going, just shaking, just like, hopefully this gets over with soon. But he kicked some cans around. We had a bunch of sweets out there. So he ate, it was
so you left food outside for the bear.
Swiss cake roll.
Good.
Yeah. He tore those up, and then he took off right into the lake and took off. And then my mom said she can still hear us, our feet slapping across the road heading home. After
Again, reinforcing the idea that you don't know a lot about bears.
I really don't.
He left food out for him and thought it was your dad. I mean, we need to. The bear is like, why are they yelling at me? Why are they calling me dad? That's what that was running through the bear's mind.
That's why
the bear's just like, they're weird, but I'm going to scare the crap out of them and take their food.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, that's funny. That's a good story. I like that. I hadn't heard that, the bear story. I didn't know you'd had that. I have not come that close to a bear. We had one here where I live in Stillwater, Minnesota, walk down our cul-de-sac, a small black bear once, just strolling down. Then we got on Facebook, the local Facebook page. People in our neighborhood were saying, saw a bear here. And there was this idiot in a truck following it, like this old white truck with his head out the window, like just following it around. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably why that's why a bear has come this far. If he was like, it's scary. It's walking away from that truck who's been just following it down city streets. It's like, no, don't do that.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Was he throwing the food
and
at
it was a citizen. It was some guy. I mean, he posted about it. Yeah, I followed him around in my truck. And I'm like, yeah, you pulled onto our cul-de-sac. Jeez. Chased him right into the old guy's yard at the end of the cul-de-sac. That's great. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Leave him alone. He'll go back to where he came from.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, we have a lot to talk about today. I know you wanted to call the show, Are You Doing Enough? And I want to know what you mean by that. I think the main thing is, and I wanted you guys to ask yourself, Jennifer and Jeff, are you doing enough for your co-host? I think that's probably why you wanted to say.
I knew that was.
Did you know that was coming? You felt that coming?
I felt like that was coming. Yeah.
But that's not what you're talking about?
Probably not. It's more like
wow, that's not even I like Jeff's probably not, but Jennifer's like, no, Tony.
my girl is direct and straight.
Hard pass. Like, no, are you insane? We're not going to think about what we can do for you. I love that. Just discuss it. No.
She's like, no.
Are you crazy?
Is the best. We were like, there's finishing touches going on to the 541 studio and the ballet bar that has to come up, and and it has to be perfectly placed, right?
Mhm.
I mean, Jennifer's standards are they have to be right. It has to be.
Right.
So,
That's good.
and they're like, I look at it, I'm like, that looks pretty good. She's like, show me 8 inches. And then the guys are like, okay, they shuffle. She's like, all right, show me 10. I'm just like, dang, who is this woman?
Barking out the orders. I love it.
I was like, but then we got to 12 and she was like, yep, that's it. I'm like, this girl knows what she wants. And you know
I
what?
like it.
Her yeses are yes and her no's are no's, right?
That's
Yeah.
good. That's great. That's awesome.
Love it. I learned a lot from her.
There's something
I know
about
you
the
have.
permanence of putting that ballet bar in there that I had to make sure it was just right.
Yeah.
Once they
Oh.
drill those holes,
It's over.
Yeah.
is,
Yeah, that's true.
you know.
If it's bolted to the floor, you want to make sure that it's right.
Right.
You know what? Measure twice, cut once.
That's right.
That's the old rule, and
That
that's
is
smart. That's
the
smart,
best
Jennifer.
Yeah.
So let's start with you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Are you doing enough? What's that question about?
Yeah,
for
so
our
I was looking into things, and I mean, certainly in this area, but it's really expensive to live. I think there was a study for the city of Fredericksburg in the area. You have to have at least $80,000 to be considered out of the poverty zone for this area, because it's just a really high standard of living. Housing is really high. We're really close to DC in Richmond. But I sort of like expanded my search for the US, and the average cost of living, the minimum is between $60,000 and $80,000 a year for a household of 2 to live. So with the idea of how do we look at retirement planning, right?
Yeah.
And then I did some research on the amount of people by percentage who have $1 million or more in retirement savings, and that is 10% is the number. That is not enough.
No.
And the people who have 250,000 are between 20 and 25%, which obviously includes the people with $1 million, right? So that is not a new set of numbers. That's just so really another
It's
15%.
inclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at best an extra 15%. So
Wow.
that's a frightening thought process, because let's just say, and there's a lot of people that complain that the Social Security won't be there, and there's a lot of fear mongers, and people who try to say you need to save. I think you absolutely have to save for sure, but I do think that Social Security will continue on. I just think that it is a little bit stressed, and
Sure.
obviously, but I never, especially for people who are planning on retiring in the next 5 years, I don't ever take it out of the equation. I think that would be stupid. But that being said, we don't know what 20 years from now looks like. A lot can change in that time period, but let's just use that number today. If you have to generate 80 grand and you have $1 million, that means you're going to have to generate an 8% return just on a continuum without any inflation. So that is a difficult task, and that is a high level of risk in order to achieve that. And you're going to have years that don't achieve 8%, right? So you're going to have market, fluctuations. So understanding how things work. Obviously, we need Social Security, and let's say you have a $30,000 or $40,000 of Social Security income. You're still going to have to make up $40 to maybe $50,000. So a little bit more in regards of taking less risk, right? So 4 to 5% is necessary to achieve just the standard of living.
Yep.
Oh wow. See? Well, it's an emergency.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
right on cue. So the idea here is that we need more savings and probably more of diversification, which we can get into a little bit deeper here. But as it pertains to do we have enough? I don't think we do, and I think that it starts early. I think a lot of people, there's no emphasis on it because you're in your 20s, right? And we kind of touched on this before.
Yeah.
But there has to be some more education and financial literacy. I just think that there's not enough of it. I bet you, can you imagine the percentage, and I didn't research this, but of people who actually balance their checkbook on a monthly basis under the age of 40. I don't know that I don't know that even exists.
Or even today, not a checkbook, but go online and look at everything, sit down once a month and look at all their expenditures and break them out.
Yeah.
Like budgeting or looking at your budget in their 20s.
Mhm.
I don't know if I knew the word budget in my 20s.
For sure.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Do we have enough for beer? Yes. Good. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's your 20.
Pizza and records. Do I have
Yeah.
enough for pizza and records this month?
Right.
There
Right.
you go.
All that
That
matters.
was my only question.
I think
Yeah.
in the world of fitness, there has to be like an honest auditing process of like, you know, you how many workouts are you actually completing each week? Or like how many times did you actually meal prep something from home as opposed to grab something on the go?
Right.
You know, I think the comfort zone most people get in is the opposite of the growth mindset. And so I feel like the topic from a fitness standpoint, are you doing enough? You have to really measure what it is you're doing and determine if that's going to help you achieve your goals, you know,
Mhm.
and if it's just kind of helping you coast, then let's sit down and let's reevaluate. Let's figure out what we can do a little bit differently to be more
Right.
consistent.
Mhm.
Because I think at the end of the day, people try to go in 10 different directions and they lose focus. You know, effort sometimes is not the problem. I think focus is. And then they try to go all out gung ho and then they burn out. And then we're just like in this middle in between space of stagnancy.
Right.
So I feel like, you know, as a professional trainer, I feel like it's not the effort so much, it's more of the alignment, figuring out.
What's the method?
Yeah, like sometimes it could mean doing fewer workouts, for instance, but with real intention.
And intensity.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, for example, with finance, we got married last month and we were looking through our, you know, credit card statements, just cutting recurring charges, you know, something like that. Are you paying attention to the unused subscriptions or, you know,
What was it? $500?
it was.
Yeah. Well, we have 10 TV streaming service subscriptions at
Right.
one point.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey kids, you know what I mean? They're
Mhm.
they're out of the house and we're all using our subscription. And I'm like, I'm gonna axe a few of these, and if you need them, you're on your own. You know,
Right.
you can sign up. You can put in
Mhm.
your credit card checking
Right.
information.
Right.
Mhm.
Because 10, it's just like we got rid of cable and streaming was so great because, you know, you had a couple, right?
Mhm.
You cut the cable and it was financially. I remember financial advisors are saying, hey, save money, cut the cable,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it was a way to save money for a good 6 months. And
Right.
then now there are probably 100 different streaming services you can subscribe to.
Amazon's like a gateway drug. They like, oh, by the way, suggest this, and then next thing you know, you have Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
And you're like, how did I get Paramount Plus? And then I'm like, why do I need AMC too? But well, I got to see that show. So
Yeah.
then I'm
Yeah.
like, it expands. And then
Every cable channel now has their own streaming service. So
Mhm.
when we used to have cable, now we have streaming, and it's crazy. So yeah, that's a good way. People always say, oh, you know, you hear, you know, go through and cut these things, or don't drink coffees at Starbucks every day. But what's a big deal? $5-7 a day. But it
Yeah,
adds up, right?
it definitely does.
Well, Jennifer's. So I'm guilty of that. So let's stay away from that topic.
I saw you get a weird look on your face, like you got
Oh.
uncomfortable. You started shifting.
Yes, I definitely did. Because Jennifer called me out on it because
It's so
I do. You know, part of my daily routine was to walk down to the coffee shop.
Nice.
You know,
I like that.
with a friend, Scott
Mhm.
Ellis, one of my employees. Or well, he's more partner than anything, but we walk down and just catch up about business and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Grab a cup of coffee and kind of walk around, you know. And so it's more of the ritual of it.
Sure.
But it really adds up, and it does. And you know, wasn't really thinking about it. I wasn't aware of it until
Yeah.
I realized that, you know, it's about $1,500 a year, right?
Yeah, if you're spending $1,500 a year at that coffee shop, It's good
Great.
you're supporting local business, and it depends on how much money you make and what your budget is. Maybe you can budget that in if that's your splurge. You can't take away life. You've got to live life, and you've got to you can do things that make you happy, but at the same time, don't be wasteful. Do you really need a $7 Venti Starbucks drink every single morning? And probably health-wise, I'm sure Jennifer would tell you, don't do that.
No,
right?
but
Because a
those egg
lot of
whites-
those, like a Venti Starbucks drink, I got the brown sugar oat milk shake and espresso, and I got addicted to it. And there was one week like I had 4 days in a row, and it's just like I started getting jittery. And if you think about, I looked at the calories. Then my daughter, who keeps me on track, Allison, who's graduating, she's like, "Dad," she's got her phone out. "You understand that the calories in there?" And it was crazy.
Was it like
forget what
500? 500 calories.
Oh, at least.
Wow.
Oh,
It was more, and like sugar content, and there were other bad things about it.
When
And
I was
caffeine,
younger-
4 shots of espresso in it.
Oh my
It's just
God.
like, it's just like crazy.
I had a caramel macchiato addiction.
Oh, you did.
That place. When I was younger,
That will set you free.
yeah. When I was 20 some years ago, when I worked for a big firm up in Northern Virginia, that's when I was first introduced to Starbucks, and my goodness, when my eyes like lit up when I drank a caramel macchiato.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, hey, this
I
is
was like,
great.
I looked down at my belly and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, beer belly. We could have coffee belly.
Yeah, I had no idea that caramel macchiato would give me that, and I was like, what is that?
That's probably 500 calories right there.
Easy.
Mushroom coffee.
Yeah, we're drinking mushroom coffee today. Less exciting.
Mushroom coffee. What's that?
It's you can buy different brands of mushroom coffee. I like Shroomology.
Shroomology.
So is it made from coffee beans still? Are there coffee beans in it?
Coffee in it with all the blended, varieties
with actual mushrooms in it.
Yep. But
why would you put mushrooms in coffee though?
So
they're adaptogens.
They are, but
what does that mean?
Adaptogens are substances that help your body adapt to stress, basically. Help your body handle stress better.
Interesting.
But mushrooms contain, and I forget, I'll have to look it up. But they're helpful for your immunity. There's a specific
wow.
Yeah, there's a specific reason for that. That basically you can fight infections better.
Wow.
And then I know shiitake and I think turkey tail are like the highest immune boost.
Oh, hey, I didn't. We don't have a delay. Watch the language on the show. Holy shiitake! What are you talking about?
And then talk about brain health. Weren't we just talking about brain?
Yes.
Yeah. Mushrooms are also touted for
lion's mane.
Yep.
Wow.
Lion's mane.
Wow. Food, but lower anxiety.
I really think we should get paid. We've actually touted this on a morning show, right, Jen?
Oh yeah.
Didn't we talk about that? We really should get paid from these people. But we put that with a shot of espresso. Like we make like an Americano with the mushroom powder in it mixed and just a little bit of protein drink, and it tastes amazing.
I have a client that talked to me about they got mushrooms at the local farmers market.
Oh yeah.
And they had a meal featuring like various varieties, and she said it was the best sleep of her life.
Is that Liz? Was that Liz?
No, it was actually Jody. But anyway,
interesting.
It was like the benefits of calm and winding down, sleeping better, aging.
Some mushrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate mushrooms.
Yeah, well, I hide it. So we hide it. That's why we put it in drinks, and then I put it in the oatmeal too. Like,
but doesn't it make it taste awful?
No.
Interesting.
You don't even notice it if you put it in oatmeal.
Yeah, I'm not a fan, but the benefits. Wow. It sounds amazing. So are you doing enough when it comes to fitness? A lot of people, you can go too far. You mentioned on past shows, this topic comes up where you can overdo it. The intensity, we had a show on intensity, where, you can take it too far. Right.
Well, I think too, like you said,
most people aren't doing enough.
No, I don't think so. I think the thing is, right, I think we're somewhere between. So let me just say this. I like attention to budget, but as an advisor, I'm less about budget and more about allocating and growing and and also, setting up income for later. But I think the reality is that most people think that when you go to a financial advisor or a registered investment advisor like me, or financial planner like me, that they're going to discuss something about their budget and their debt, right? And so
people get panicked because they don't want to address it, and they don't like talking about it.
No one does. And I think the thing is, right, is we have to have some personal responsibility, because they are like, it's a lever system, right? So if you pull this lever and you spend money, it's less for you to save over here, right? So you have to have, some built-in, what's the term called in intrinsic, right? In fitness, it's an intrinsic desire to to work out, right? That's one of the terms that NASM used for the CPT. I think you have to have some intrinsic desire to have a healthy retirement, right? And if you're understanding that you have to save X amount of dollars in order to live for that phase of your life, I think people just don't think that far down the road. But there are some rules of thumb. I think most people agreed back in the late 90s and early 2000s that 10% of everything that you bring in and you save it is enough over a 30-year period, right? So if you're in your 20s and you're not making a bunch of money, take 10% and put it away and live off of the rest, right? And that's really where this whole thing where the rubber meets the road. Can you live on 90% of your income?
Yeah. Well, I want to throw this stat out for our listeners who might not be aware, and it really addresses on the financial side anyway. Kiplinger, which is a great source, a reliable source. It's not political, it's not biased. They just talk about finance. And they cited an AARP study, and this is recent, within the last year. 1 in 5 adults ages 50 plus have no retirement savings.
Say that again.
Wow.
Only 1 out of every 5 adults in America have no retirement savings over 50. So people 50 and over in America, 1 out of every 5 has nothing saved for retirement.
That literally stresses me out just thinking about that.
Yeah, and more than half are worried they will not have enough money to make it through retirement.
But the 1 in 5 don't worry. Is that what you're saying?
Isn't it? Wouldn't it be ironic? They should be worried if they have nothing and they're already in their 50s. Wouldn't you say?
That's frightening.
Yeah, and I would say on the health side, I bet the statistics are similar. Like how many people exercise or eat healthy in America? It's worse, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet the stats are worse because I know I'm guilty of it. I mean, from everything I've read and we've talked about, and I think we're going to do a whole show on this next time. You talked about this, about it's kind of going to be a negative show, but we're going to talk about how, the processed foods and things are affecting, obesity, processed foods, lack of exercise. But, processed foods are killing people and causing diseases. And I bet the stat of everyone eats processed foods. I mean, I don't know I don't know anybody who doesn't once in a while go through a drive-through or buy food in the grocery store that's processed. I mean, nowadays it's all processed foods, right?
Well, you can actually make an effort to eat whole foods. It's not that difficult. We do it.
Yeah, I don't know that we eat maybe an RX bar or something like that. That's processed.
If we're hiking or something. But even that, there's all the ingredients in an RX bar you can pronounce. When you start looking at ingredient lists that are lengthy, that's when you're starting to raise an eyebrow and say, what's actually in this? But we really do. And Jeff, you don't spend a whole lot of time in the kitchen either. It's not like he's slaving to eat whole foods in the kitchen all the time. But shortcuts help a lot when it comes to cooking whole foods.
But that ties in, right, to are you doing enough? Are you making the efforts you need to with on the health side, Jennifer, like exercise, eating right? And when we talk about eating right, I read there's scary stuff. And I think we should continue that conversation next week.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
I just want to kind of put a bow on this, because there are some tips that we can,
Yeah.
you really, get a third party opinion, honestly. And that way you aren't driving it into an iceberg. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think the thing is, you have to have a professional opinion to take a look at it realistically.
Yeah.
And because your realistic is based off of what we talked about before, what your family did, what your parents influenced you with, what your peers, whatever. None of it always makes sense, but it makes sense to you because that's how you lived, right?
Right.
So I think Jennifer and I just went through a process with a financial advisor that wasn't me, who works with me, Chris. And we did that because I didn't want to, have my influence on our situation. I wanted
Remove your personal emotion from it because it's your money.
Yeah. And one, the thing that I learned, the reason I'm bringing this part up is because it is important for us to keep an eye on, what I walked away from those meetings with Chris and Jennifer, was I need to pay attention to what I'm spending. And I don't normally, I don't overspend. I don't feel like I overspend, but I look at those things, not as, not with a magnifying glass, and I really should. And so a practical tip here is to really address those things that you're doing and put the why behind them, right? So if you know, if you're able to have some meaning behind what you're spending, I think it makes total sense, right? So if it's super important to you, right, find a way to accomplish that. And we've talked about this a little bit, but anything outside of that. So again, and I've said this before, if you take the money that you would have spent on something that does not matter and save it, you've essentially doubled up in that column, right? So if you're going to spend $100 on something and you decide the next day that you don't, take that $100 and stick it in some place that's going to make some money, and now you're onto something. And I really feel like getting yourself to 10%. I think most people are pretty decent about tithing. If you're a Christian, you go to church, you're paying something, you're giving something, and you should. And I think that that's super important. I think something gets deeply unlocked when you're able to give. And so I think it's
whether
really
it's time and money, both, or just money or just time. Yep.
Yeah, do it. I think that should be the top thing that you should be focused on. Everybody should be focused on giving in some capacity, whatever that looks like to you. But that unlocks a lot for people, because you stop being so rigid with or hoarding. You have to be able to have some flow in life.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with giving, but after that, look at ways that you can save for the future, because you're not going to want to be working into your 70s and 80s. No one does.
No
one really does. There are some people, there's a select people with a super type A personality that will never stop really working, right? But for the most of us, we're going to want to have that downtime, and we're going to want to enjoy kids, grandkids. We're going to want to enjoy traveling, things that we didn't get a chance to do when we were younger because we're working. So, so understand that there's meaning behind putting that money away. It's not out of fear. It's not out of compulsion. It is because there's real value in saving that money over time, because compound interest does amazing things when you start early. So you're never too young to start saving money, and you're not too old to start saving money either. Even those folks that are in their 50s, you still have time. A little bit is better than nothing. And so I invite people to look at ways, look at your risk tolerance, look at things that you're okay with taking risk on, and then look at putting that money there and get an opinion. Get somebody else's opinion, so you're not completely oblivious when it comes to your own situation. And a lot of people do. I was oblivious until I really engaged a professional personal training facility like Jennifer's.
Yeah, and I think that baseline is what this is all about. The question, am I doing enough, is vague until you have a baseline to compare that against. And that's what the evaluation does. It shows you where you are and where you ought to be for that age and that gender. And that, it helps you set goals. And you don't need to, track forever in terms of like logging food and logging exercise. I think you definitely need a snapshot, a place and time to be able to look at it concretely and audit, where can I be better? And it's not as easy as one might think because it's so multifaceted. It's stress related, sleep, exercise, mobility, food, everything matters. And let's get it all on paper so we can start to recognize patterns that we can improve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And where does stress, where are the two, if you take a look at what impacts your daily stress, it's usually work related or financially, rooted.
Mm-hmm.
It stresses relationships. Health is a big stressor, right? For other people around you. So, I mean, all this wellness, all the things that we're talking about are really, they help each other. So if you're fit financially, you're going to, and you're fit in your body, you got everything you need. I mean,
Yeah.
you really do, because once you start to see some relief on either one of those things, it's just gonna help the other one, right?
Yeah.
It's really just gonna help that.
Yeah.
So,
And you need to make the decision to do more, but you don't have to do it alone, I think is the message
right.
here for our listeners.
Sure.
There are great people out there, Jennifer and Jeff, who can help with the fitness aspect and the physical health side of it and the financial health. And then you'll sleep better at night, less stress. And who doesn't want that? So before we go, let our
Mhm.
listeners out there know how they can set up consultations with you to find out more or ask questions.
Yeah. So for Fredericksburg Fitness, you check us out on our website, and that's fbergfitness.com. F as in Frank, B as in boy, urgfitness.com. And you'll just select the discovery call link and you'll be booked on my schedule.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff?
And for me, the Retirement Smith, you can see it right on your screen, theretirementsmith.com or 540-371-9777. You can go on the website and click on a small form to get an appointment with me, and I would be happy to walk through some things with you. Yeah, give us a shout. We'd love to work with you.
All right. Well, great show today. And that's a great question to ask. Am I doing enough for my health and for my finance? You guys are great. I encourage our listeners to get a hold of you, set up that consultation. A good show today, listeners. That does it for today's episode of Fitness and Finance with our hosts, Jeffrey Smith and Jennifer Scherer.